Mitochondria, a prehistoric parasite? Most of life's diversity is prokaryotic. That is to say, if you counted all the different species in the world, most of them would have cells without a nucleus. And yet, here you are, a eukaryote reading this passage. In fact, most living things with which you are familiar are eukaryotes. They're organisms made of cells with a nucleus, surrounded by a nuclear membrane, and a host of other organelles. You probably do not think about prokaryotes much at all, outside of slathering on some hand sanitizer in the hopes of killing germs. But some scientists say there is evidence pointing to a prokaryotic past for all of life, including you, dear eukaryote. Like all theories, this one started with a question. What are the origins of the differences between prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells? Scientists proposed possible answers by gathering a series of observations. In this case, we know that both cell types have been around for billions of years. Both cell types are found among a tremendous complexity of life. But the eukaryotic cell has more complex internal structures than a typical prokaryotic cell. By studying prokaryotes, eukaryotes, and the organelles inside, scientists believe there is evidence to suggest that organelles such as mitochondria and chloroplasts were once independent organisms. They were likely related to prokaryotes, such as today's bacteria, and they found a mutually beneficial relationship inside another cell. And mutually beneficial means it benefits both organisms. In this case, maybe the mitochondria and the cell that it inhabited. Unlike other organelles, mitochondria and chloroplasts have their own DNA, and it is a single circular molecule. Bacteria have a similar circular molecule of DNA. A cell's nucleus does not have the genetic information needed to make mitochondria or chloroplasts. Unlike other organelles, these organelles must be made from their own molecules of DNA. If you remove these organelles from a cell, there is no way for the cell to create new ones. This has real-life implications or consequences for humans. For example, in sexual reproduction, only the egg cell is large enough to contain mitochondria. Sperm cells do not contain mitochondria. This means that our mitochondrial DNA comes exclusively from our mothers. Fathers cannot pass along mitochondrial DNA. Speaking of reproduction, mitochondria reproduce on their own. They do so by pinching in half to form two identical structures. Bacteria use the same reproduction method. Genetic sequencing also shows that mitochondrial DNA is very similar to the DNA of a certain type of bacteria that is present in the world today. There are a number of other biochemical similarities among mitochondria, chloroplasts, and bacteria that are too coincidental to ignore. In other words, mitochondria and chloroplasts are very much act like independent organisms, working together with our cells for mutual survival. That said, the relationship between an organelle like mitochondria and their host is a very, very long one. As a result, mitochondria would not be able to live independently. They rely on their cell for a variety of important functions, such as protein synthesis. In return, mitochondria supply the rest of the cell with the energy it needs to function. This relationship seems to be for keeps.